joining us, this audience. Martin Mutua, Clay Muganda, Catherine Omwanthe continues to stay with us. Welcome. And there's a breaking story on Clay's head. Clay's head.
Take it away.
Hey. Let us first talk about the coverage of that hair.
What happened to the hair?
What happened?
I just dressed it differently. Look at it as dressing.
See, dressing it differently, in my understanding, is today is this way. I could hold it up, let it down. It is not there.
No, I mean, I can put it back, don't worry. Within 2 or 3 weeks. I just dressed it differently.
Okay.
Yeah, so look at this as dressing. My hairdresser is a very nice chap. He can do wonders.
Was it a wig?
No, let's not go there.
Putting you on the spot. But you look great. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah. James.
Karibu sana. Martin. Karibu sana.
Asante sana. I'm happy to be joined by my colleague, Catherine, today.
Our
one and only.
Studio analyst.
Tell you. So elections, gentlemen, lady, we've had elections for many cycles. You know, you have this election, the other. And in your opinion, I'll begin with you, Martin, looking at this last one that we had and how, as the media, that was covered. And some of the criticism that came in is that the media was too careful from 2007. That 2007, it was say it as it is, you know, come and buy. This time, there was some form of self-gagging, self-checking. What do you say?
That's very true. You're not far from the truth, because we are also human. As journalists, we are also human beings, and we are also Kenyans. And we are alive to the fact of what happened in the previous elections. And I think that during that time, we were accused of being part of, in terms of complicity, to have funded the chaos that took place in terms of the coverage that we aired, and we found the emotion, which I don't know whether that is true or false, because it's for the Kenyans to decide. But as a person, I felt also we needed to tread carefully, because the world over, you've not seen anywhere, even in the US, which is a major democracy, you don't see the media there flashing all sorts of riots in the event that anything of the sort happens. You'll always see sort of kind of coverage that just centers on elections, the way they're being, the votes that are being counted and how people are voting and stuff like that. So arising from the experience that we went through in 2007, I guess there was need also to be cautious in terms of how we report. But I believe we never lost sight of the fact that we also reported all sides. If we didn't do that, maybe it is for Kenyans to tell us whether that was true or false.
Well, the question, Martin, before we go to the violence issue and whatnot, the first job is to report the elections fairly and correctly, right? The political process, as it were. So 2007, we erred in commission. You know, we committed a lot of sin in making sure that the elections and the political process was mad, and in the end, we could not know what the results was. You know, and we can't tell anyone for sure that, well, so-and-so won the election. We can't say that for sure. In 2007.
Yeah,
in
2013, even the referee himself didn't know which side won.
Yeah. In 2013, we decided, since we committed a sin, now let's do an omission. All right? So our omission was like, you know what? See no evil, say no evil, do no evil. This IEBC is God. It must conduct this election, you know, in the best way that under the sun. And I think that is where everyone is asking the question. Shouldn't we have asked and pushed the IEBC a bit more? All right? Clay.
I think I want to agree with Mutua to some extent, but by admitting that, by saying that in 2013, or rather last year, the media decided to be cautious because they'd been accused of funding violence in 2007, that actually, to me, it means like you're admitting as if you made a mistake in 2007. I don't think the media made a mistake in 2007. Until now, I maintain that the media did not make a...
But Joshua Rapsang is presenting us. Is it not a representation of the media?
the media, you cannot actually, then are you going to say, because Mr. Ruto is there and Mr. Kenyatta is there, are you going to say all politicians made a mistake?
Political class failed.
So how many politicians are there then? The number of politicians are there. So basically, if it's apportioning blame, then more politicians made mistakes than the media then, you see. Because the whole problem is actually, it's the political system. It was not the media per se. Because elections in Kenya, we've just been talking about 2007. Have we looked at 2002? Have we looked at elections before that? Have we looked at how did the media, I don't know who was in the newsroom during the Mlolongo time, when, I mean, was it 1988, 83, 88?
The next election was a secret ballot.
So
before that.
Yeah, before all those elections. So they've always been all these things. And I think it's, by 2013, note that the media, I mean, for the media to say that actually we're being cautious because we're being accused of 2007, they're admitting liability, and that is wrong. I don't think the media was wrong.
You don't think the media was wrong?
Yeah, because the media reported the chaos after they had started. They did not
not before.
Not before.
Well, Kat.
I agree with Clay. I wasn't in the media by then. I was just clearing college, and from what I watched, I think the media did what it could do at the time. It reported, it was objective. I mean, there were the occasional, biased reporting, but I think we did a good job. But at the same time, you see, Joseph Arap Sang he had a show. He wasn't reporting the news, I think maybe it
was an opinion.
It was an opinion. He was giving his opinion on
I get that. I mean,
so it wasn't like mainstream news.
I don't think it's the Kenyan media on trial at The Hague. I don't think it's the Kenyan media on trial at The Hague.
It is Joshua Arap Sang as the person.
As the person.
Yeah, I don't think it's Kenyan.
And maybe we should drop
at the same time, I don't think probably that it's the Kikuyu or it's the Kalenjins or it is the Kenyan politicians. If you take it like, okay, the media is on trial at the ICC, then you'd actually say that the Kenyan political system is on trial at ICC.
So if you said the media did not fail in 07, then did it fail in 13 last year?
Yes. Now, what happened last year actually?
Because you see, what happened last year was trying to correct
what happened
07.
last year?
So
no, they were trying to correct. They never made a mistake. They thought that they made a mistake. Then now last year is when they made a mistake.
Okay.
Because last year we were just too cautious.
Okay.
I mean, we swept so many things under the carpet. Whatever is happening now, that all these 50+1, all these anomalies that are being discovered now, it is because the media did not want to touch anything. The media did not want to ask questions. The media wanted to sit back and be fed. Because if at all you are told, like in 2007, you are wrong. So now you guys sit back, we will give you the right information. When you go for it, you'll get the wrong information and you'll cause violence. Yes, it's good there was no violence in 2013, but that does not mean that actually this thing is not festering. It's just a wound that is festering. And I'm very sorry to say this, but this thing, it will blow at some point.
Martin, you were, in the newsroom, on the desk, some of us would say we're just being sent around, like Sophia and whatnot.
But around.
You were there, in the last, let's start with the last election before we go 2013. Why didn't we push the right question, as in the IBC, the right question? Because we're all in this country. Yes, the issue of, 2007.
We were numbed,
Why didn't we ask the IBC serious questions, like a test on those BVR kits, the EVDs, were they going to work? Why didn't we ask those questions?
I think these are questions we put up when this thing was started. Actually, I remember I have reported about this BVR thing the moment it started. It came in here, before it came, when it came, and even when it failed. We put all these questions. We even questioned the rationale.
Not as boldly, Martin, as we should have.
We were supposed to go on the rooftops and stuff there. We reported completely that this thing, even with the timelines that we are having, this thing is bound to fail. It can't work. And we made comparisons with other countries. We had interviews also we took the best example of Ghana on how when they introduced the BVR kits, whether they were going to be able to, what period they used for it. And I remember very well, we used to discuss this thing even on the morning show every other day, asking about why would these BVR kids come at this point in time when we are just getting towards the elections? Where will the training be done? How will the IBC officials be able to be trained on these kids? How will the Kenyan public, in terms of civic education, be trained on these kids? These are questions we posed over and over again until that project collapsed. And then now we were being told about a manual thing. Yet, we were asking questions in terms of what Kriegler had said, because the major recommendation by Kriegler was you must have a you must have an automated system to be able, an electronic system to run an election if you want to avoid what transpired in 2007. And we kept drumming these things, and the government kept delaying in terms of purchasing the equipment. And together with IBC, they were also dragging their feet. And we put these questions to them, and we used to pose every other day. When this thing collapsed on our mind, maybe now after it collapsed, we never now went further to question whether now these elections are going to be credible or not. Maybe that's where we stopped. And I think it's something that is a debate that we need to discuss. Probably now our good friend Mohan and his team have picked it up and are questioning the same. So we, as a media, I believe we ask the right questions.
I want to think like what happens most of the time in Kenya, and probably, we are Kenyans, we work here and we live here. It's euphoria. I think there was so much euphoria before the elections, last elections, that actually even the media itself got swallowed in that actually, as much as Mutua says that the questions were asked, but were they answered? Were the questions answered? So we ask questions, but we're asking questions because we need answers. So if we don't get the answers, then we've not achieved our aim. So these questions were not answered at that particular moment. Yeah. And then there was so much euphoria.
If I could just help you on that point, in that investigative piece and the interview that Isaac Hassan gave to John Allan Namu and Muhammad Ali, he said the reason why this EVDs failed was simple reasons like people forgot to charge.
Yes. It's
how is that even a reason? And we let that go. How
that I found very scandalous.
You see, like right now, they will tell us, they'll give us any answer, they'll give us any reason. What are we going to do about it? Had we asked all these questions at that moment and demanded answers, if at all they gave us an answer like that, our biggest fear is that people might forget to charge, or our biggest fear is that we'll go to places where the battery packs will not work. So then we could ask them, what are you doing about it? You see, but right now, if you listen to the chairman of IEBC, who actually, he sounds very exasperated. It's like, why are you asking me these things? I want this thing is done. I am asking you a question, and then you tell me, go to our website. Why don't you just give me the figures there and then?
Because the question then would have been, and I think it's been posed elsewhere, and some of the analysts will say, well, listen, this whole BVR kit and whatever was meant to fail right on the onset, right? And we were used, and everyone was just in the process, of helping to legitimize a process that was going to fail. It was never supposed to work.
We said those things. We said them on TV. We put it on paper, and we said this thing is going to fail. It was being set up. Kenyans are being set up, and even then we used to, because I still remember the figure of several billions on this kit. We said taxpayers are being defrauded because this kit has been bought by taxpayers' money, and that money is going to waste. It has never been used at all, and it has died. And I got very annoyed the other day when I saw them attempting to offer advice to government on how they're going to register people. Yet they have failed to use the same kit for the purpose that it was intended. So the
government called upon them.
Has no business going anywhere near that issue of registering Kenyans. They should concentrate on. By now, they should even be trying to build capacity and try to register voters and do civic education until when we get to that particular time. The issue of registering Kenyans, that is a government business, not Isaac's work.
What do you think?
I have a feeling that we were in love with IEBC. media aside, the whole country was in love with IEBC. There was this new commission, independent. As someone said, if somebody has independent in front of their name, please do not trust them. But we were so in love with them. We wanted these guys to work.
Succeed.
We were so ready, and this stopped us from answering the questions. So yes, the questions were asked, but there was no one to answer. And the public wasn't in the mood to push for an answer. That's what I feel. I feel that the public was just like, this has to work. This has to work. Because we cannot go back.
It was more about faith or hope,
It was our hope.
Yeah, than on the actual thing, the actual efficacy of these things.
Exactly.
Because IEBC was almost, all the time, it was always demanding more money. I used to call it, a crybaby, the crybaby of an election, or whatever, commission, because it kept on complaining. And nobody was asking how have you spent the other money? And actually, a lot of money, some of the things that we never asked is that, how did IEBC itself spend this money? How much were they paying to hire vehicles? How much were they paying suppliers for those T-shirts and all that?
How much are they paying the lawyers?
And how much were they paying for communication and adverts?
Yes.
It was in the millions.
Yeah.
And it was questioned.
There's so much money that went into other needs. It was like, IEBC is independent. This is a cash cow. We need to make money now. And there's so many suppliers, there's so many people who became millionaires from dealing with IEBC during that time, just in the run-up to the election. So much money went into what it was not supposed. It could have probably gone into training, but did it?
I wouldn't have minded how much they messed up. That would have been an audit after the election. But as long as they would have kept straight to their mandate and ensured that we had a proper working electronic system in the election.
Yeah, but you see, they could not train people because they were using money on other things. It was like, okay, they're actually using money on the things that they can see instead of maybe training people. How can you? How on earth do you end up forgetting to charge? Or maybe the battery packs were not there. This is the basic thing that you could have been trained. First of all, this is what you go through and all that. Yes.
That's what I'm saying. The issue of charging a battery or not, those are semantics. That you should not even tell Kenyans anything like that, because you are admitting total failure in terms of management of your administration.
So they spend so much money, they don't even have enough money to spend on lying.
You even need to tell Kenyans. We gave them money and they bought a package of the kit. We don't want to know whether there's a battery or not. That is not my business as a Kenyan. My business is that I know money was spent, there's equipment was bought. Is it working? Are officials able to use that kit? How are Kenyans not going to know how they're going to use it or not? Those are the things that IEBC should have concerned with. The other issues it's like you telling me, explaining to Kenyans that this, instead of when the paper doesn't come out, you start telling them, oh, our machine broke down or something. They don't want to know about that. They want to have the product, the final product. So in terms of failure, definitely these are the times we need to deal with this matter now and now only, because if we continue to wait, we're going to be caught up in 2017 and then start discussing towards the final year what is going to be done, whether we should have this IEBC, whether we should have the kits again, yet they are somewhere gathering dust.
So basically, the thing is, the media did not ask the right questions, or they asked the questions
and
we didn't get the answers.
We just didn't get the answers.
What we got was a lot of reassurance. I remember being at Bomas and we had an interview with the CEO of Swago. Still CEO, yes.
Former.
Major.
Suspended.
Ambassador. You can use also.
Talking to Mr. X. All those are fine.
Okay. And, first there was a training for just journalists to understand and taken through all the rooms, because there was a tallying center, there was where the big monitors were. And then there was just a run through. They took people through, the ballot boxes, this is how everything is going to work. So there was an understanding of the systems. And then 2 days before, because there were camps there, journalists were asking questions. Are there any challenges you're facing? We spoke to the IT people. Everybody was confident and happy. So questions, I think, at that point were asked. It is when things now started unraveling, and then you had politicians coming in and wanting to give live statements and talk about rigging and all these things. And the thing with that line of, speech talking about rigging is substantiate that. You're just going to say that to hype tensions and get people upset, or are you actually going to say this is the evidence we have? And maybe some media houses felt you don't want to air that because this person is just loose cannon for the sake of.
But I think we should have probably started asking questions early. Maybe we could have gotten all these answers and probably checking the efficacy of all these things. But as Catherine says, and this is actually, those people who are too much, people who are very friendly to IEBC and that independent thing. And
we couldn't imagine.
There was too much euphoria. There was too much euphoria. And this is something that affects Kenyans very, very much. I mean, you see it and you don't want to question it. Because if you question it, you might be seen like, oh, because you've already been warned. In 2007, the media caused chaos. You guys now
you're not patriotic.
And that was the exact reaction on Twitter. Yeah. Remember when the results weren't coming in, and guys on Twitter were like, "Oh, calm down," and guys, whoever asked a question would get a flood of you know.
KOT was very upset.
Yeah,
before we continue, let's take this call from Joseph calling us from Nairobi. Joseph, good morning.
Yes, morning.
Thanks for calling and being part of the newsroom. Share with us your views or question.
Actually, I want to contribute on IEBC. I want to agree with Mr. Mutua.
Yes.
That actually the IEBC should not advise the government on how they will going to do the carrying of the Kenyans. Yeah, and also I want to say, actually we don't trust on IEBC. And I think the government should find another way, or maybe we could employ people maybe from outside, like the chairman who can represent the IEBC, because it seems like actually our Kenyans, when we represent the IEBC or the elections, it means like we normally side with one side, which is not good. So I think we should employ people from the outside. Once they release the elections, they just go away because they're not going to say anything.
All right. Thank you, Joseph. And we'll talk about that and keep your calls coming if you're watching this, and more so on how the media, in your opinion, has covered the elections, not just the last, but in the past, and what your thoughts are. Call in and share with us. But on what Joseph has said, supporting what Martin, you said, the IEBC has been invited by government. They didn't say, hey, we want to help you register Kenyans. No, the government has said, you have the kits. Your kits can help us, digitally register Kenyans. They're not the ones conducting the exercise. It's not in their mandate to register Kenyans.
They have kits.
But the kits have failed.
Yeah, okay,
So
fine.
perhaps
They forgot to charge those things.
No. Okay, fine. What failed was actually the EVD, the electronic voter identification.
Identification.
The biometric voter registration. I don't think that one did not fail.
But wasn't it the same gadget?
No.
I mean, it's supposed to be used. That was for registration purposes.
Yes.
Then after you registered.
This is what they want to use, because I remember even when I went to my polling station, they could get all my particulars, and I registered through the so-called BVR, which actually, it had been tested in 2007, by the way, in some constituencies, even in Nairobi. So biometric voter registration, this one of reading whatever through fingerprints or maybe through the iris and stuff like that, I think that's what IEBC wants to, probably the government is telling IEBC, let's use your kit. But now the thing is, IEBC is already tainted. So I think right now, what we need to do is to ask as many questions as possible so that the government can actually explain to us why it wants to use IEBC. While IEBC, right now, people are still asking questions about that kit.
But it is some people. Austin, good morning, Austin.
Morning.
How are you, sir?
I'm good.
What's your concern this morning, Austin?
My concern, actually, I needed to point out on some things about the media.
Yes.
We Kenyans, we are not supposed to blame media. Actually, Kenyan media, especially KTN, you guys are doing a very wonderful job.
Thank you for that, Austin.
Thank you,
appreciate
Austin.
that.
And if you really look on how things are being managed in Kenya, there is something called the political class. There are people who claim that they manage the country called Kenya. This is not right. We are supposed to be democratic. It's so painful to see, like when we talk about the last election, 2013, Kenyans came out in big numbers, and we were really yearning for a change. And it's shameful when you see the chairman of IEBC, Mr. Hassan, how he was responding on questions regarding the 50+1. It's shameful. It really point blank how they are incompetent. This is very bad, and Kenyans, I'm very sure, including me, I'm so bitter to see very big men who have reasoning capacity. They're being paid a lot of money, and yet they cannot deliver. This is very bad.
Austin, let me ask you, what are you certainly not happy about with the IEBC or the elections? What is that one thing that you're not happy about?
There's no honesty when you see every detail that was going on. There's no honesty. Definitely there was something that was being cooked. It's only that some things cannot come out clearly. But even if you cannot see, there's something that were being cooked. And I think IBC should be banned. They're not even supposed to be given that second chance of running another election here in Kenya.
Okay, Austin.
But one thing I have to say.
Thank you very much, Austin. Thank you for your comments this morning. Kath.
I think the smallest speck on IEBC, it should be disbanded, just for confidence purposes, just for the country to fall in love with another commission,
so that so they can do the same.
No, not so that they can do the same. I mean, of course, this time it needs. If we have a commission, it needs to be set up now in order for it to actually conduct.
So you'd go for disbanding?
I would go for disbanding,
but
because the smallest speck, because
it's 6 years.
Austin probably represents millions of Kenyans. And millions of Kenyans, their opinions are valid.
They are valid, but understand that all elections
the opinions and dreams are valid.
Yes. all such bodies, Mutua, will be faced with challenges across the board, around the world. There is no perfect election. And I think from the very beginning, we did see them raising the issues and the challenges they faced. We are not saying they're in the clear and there were no shortcomings or failures, but we're also saying we want a body that one day they'll finish the election and we'll be like, bless you.
No, I think this idea of saying there's no perfect election in the world, I think it's an excuse. And what's wrong with being the best? What's wrong with being the best?
Devil's advocate here.
No, hang on.
Oh, the best.
What's wrong with being the best? I mean, why?
No, not even that. There are 814 million voters today in India who are voting.
Yeah,
do you know how many? Do you know how many election commissioners they have? They have three. Chief election commissioner and 2. And do you know how powerful it is?
Let's go to India.
Do you know how powerful it is? Do you know how powerful it is? They actually, it got to a point, there was another guy, the chief election commissioner before these guys, it was called T.N. Session. He used to say, when I sneeze, it is news. When I don't sneeze, it is news also. Because what he told politicians is that we are one of the poorest countries in the world. We cannot continue to have the most expensive elections. So right now, if you print posters, you have to tell me how many posters you have printed, and you have to put the number. You cannot, I mean, it came up with so many measures. So we can only change laws here also. Either make the IEBC, or whatever it is that we call the electoral body, very strong, or actually we probably dilute it and give it more powers. I mean, dilute it and so that we can control it the way we're probably doing, or make it very strong and then have more power so that it can hold credible elections.
So disband or not?
There are perfect elections, correct?
Of course, yes, they're perfect elections.
Perfect,
I don't buy that.
They're not perfect elections.
And then this thing of giving the example of the US.
Let's talk to Victor and Mumias. Good morning, Victor. Victor?
Oh, you give up.
Hello?
I think Victor is
Victor, your call is valid. Call again. We will talk to you.
Martin.
Yes. in terms of an election, you can have. Why are other countries not fighting when they're holding elections? For instance, South Africa, Ghana, which is we're taking to be an example, and maybe I can't use others where you have you have dictators where they have ruined.
Or Uganda.
No, that's what I'm trying to avoid to mention. I'm trying to avoid.
They never fight.
So for real, elections can be perfect. It's possible. You can have just a few challenges here and there. Challenges you cannot fade away.
Foreseeable challenges.
But you can have an election whereby at least 80 or 90% of the electorate will say for sure, yes, this person won and that person lost.
Yeah.
That can be possible. The problem we have here is that we tend to politicize the electoral commission every other time we get towards the election.
And then blame the media.
After that, when we saddle it with all the politics that are there, then they carry out a partisan election, or they mess up an election. Then we look for scapegoats that we can be able to hold. And that's where we get a problem. We should be able to build institutions that can be able to stand the test of time. If we were taking the example of India. That's how we ended up with an interim independent electoral commission, because we tried to reduce the number of commissioners so that we can be able to build those structures. But even before the IEC did its job, because they were doing a good job at that time when they were formed, and there were examples in terms of, because they're the ones who introduced the electronic voting. They did that kind of thing with several by-elections, and Kenyans were beginning to gain that confidence. Before we knew it, all those commissioners were thrown out, and we formed another one.
But the chairman was in the IEC.
The chairman only was remaining, but you have a chairman, and then all the other characters.
We have institutional memory, the face, and
nothing.
the sound.
I believe you me. I believe if we had the same IEBC, the one that Independent Electoral Commission at that time, to transform into the electoral body, I am so certain that we would have had a credible election.
That's faith in people, Martin. That's not faith in institutions. Martin.
Because those people are the ones who build the institutions. Institutions are not built by...
Winnie Gushu was here yesterday being interviewed by Managing Editor Joe, and she said it's not about the people, it's about the institution. And that is the difference between other jurisdictions that have elections that work and us. Because there are about 17 Kenyans right now in India which are conducting an election, and they will know who their winner is of the election, uncontested. We have about 40 million people. We can't.
But that team had not concluded even building the entire that institution into a credible. They had not run a general election. They only had run by-elections. They were not given a mandate to be able to run a fully fledged election.
So they didn't qualify.
By the time there was
also 6 elections in one day was.
Yeah, but I think
you bring in new people to run a general election, yet they had not even run any by-election, or they had not been tested or anything. Definitely, they did not even know the structures that had been put in place there. So we ended up messing things. So that we let's not look at what has happened before. We have an opportunity now to build this institution and be able to make it work. What are we doing now? We are still wrangling. We are still throwing blame here and there. The body itself is not telling Kenyans what it's doing in terms of preparation for the next polls.
And we are not asking, because part of this perfect election will include the media asking perhaps those questions that Gandhara tells us to ask, who's not here today. Let's take this call from Mark, and we'll continue. Mark, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for calling. Go ahead with your comment or question.
Yeah, I would like to raise a concern. First, I want to thank Etienne for the profile they gave us about what happened for the election. That is Ichubebu. Two, I feel IBC should not be banned. You've given us enough evidence that the election was flawed. The commissioners that did this should be arrested. You have given us enough evidence. They should be arrested and charged, but IEBC should not be banned. That is my concern.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mark, for watching and your contribution this morning. You heard what Mark had to say there, Kat?
That's a
in
bit-
support of
Yeah,
not quite
he's saying that,
disbanding,
leave the body, the institution,
Yeah.
Bring
arrest
new
the
commissioners.
commissioners. Okay, fine. You can argue that Major Oswago is already
He's out of the system.
is out of the system.
Yeah.
but he's saying why me, and he's talking about the others.
I mean,
Then
anybody
tell.
would ask that. Anybody would ask that. But for me, from a media point of view, and not up from the political analyst, because I think we gave them so much room, and they talked so much about the EVDs and the BVRs, and probably that's why we never got the answers when we're asking questions. I think from a media point of view, what we need to push for probably is to keep on asking questions, and then, I mean, the government keeps on saying positive criticism and all that, but the thing is, you can only draw examples from other places, and probably tell them, like, I mean, this thing was probably too rushed, you know? It was too rushed. I'm sorry, you mentioned India, but you see, like, India nowadays uses voting machines, but they had tried to introduce them as early as early 90s, and you see the people refused. So it has taken them a period of time to get people to get used to them, you know. So I think also we took this thing too fast, and I think that's a question that actually that's what the media should be saying, like, okay, fine, let's slow down, let's go do this thing systematically, so that we don't end up again next elections, and then we bungle everything again. I mean, everything should be done. I mean, we cannot just bring all these things. 90% of probably Kenyan voters probably don't even know. That's how you end up with, don't even know what to mark. That's how we end up with all these spoiled votes and all that. So if people do not know how to do that, how are they even probably going to know how to use this technology and all that?
That business of knowing how to mark, in simple terms, is called civic education. And that civic education is supposed to be carried out by the electoral body.
But
and there is money budgeted
for civic education.
Yes, for civic education.
Did we ask them how much
We
have they
kept
spent on
asking-
that?
we
Yes,
kept
yes, yes.
asking that.
And KTN, we did quote your vote. We went around the country to even just get a feel of how people understood the process and whether they knew enough.
What did you guys find?
We asked those questions before the elections. Believe you me, we were having shows here day in, day out, and we kept asking, what is the IBC doing in terms of civic education?
So basically, the media did its job.
Hang on.
Because we also had like civic education for ourselves. Because I remember I did a story showing people how this is how you're going to vote on the day.
You're part of the cover-up. Let's go to Isiolo. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning to you.
Whom am I speaking to?
We are talking to Fugita Jatani from Isiolo.
Sorry?
Fugita Jatani from Isiolo.
Yes. What is your concern and your comment this morning?
My concern is about the election.
Yes.
On IBC. The way you have said, I wanted them to educate Kenyans on how to use all those machinery that they have used for the election. Because now they are put on and then there is no people have the idea of using the machine so that they can help you. Because as for now, I was even following the Supreme, all what have been covered.
All right. Thank you for your comment this morning. That line was not very clear, so we were not able to pick up. But
yeah, it's
but he did talk about
it's from Isiolo, so that's a telephone line which was not clear.
yes.
Did you expect the results from that place to come? I mean, election results to come to be clear.
What I found, and somebody was asking about this the last time we had this conversation, is in as far, especially now when we're talking elections and we have them every 5 years. Journalists, the crop of journalists we have, you guys have been around longer, but you find the majority of the people who are in the fields, perhaps that was their first election last year. So there's no that memory or understanding or...
I don't think you'll have time to discuss that.
No, but also what's going on? Why are we not having those journalists still there today, still in the field?
That is because Kenyan media, there's a very high turnout.
I agree with you.
There was an article.
There is a very high turnout.
There's an article that immediately after the results were announced, and a lady from, I think, The Independent did an article on what Kenyan journalism has become.
Yes,
and she said,
Michaela.
yes, remember that article?
Yes.
The IEBC chair stood there and asked any question at the Bomas. Sophia Wanuna was there. And among
said, yes, I asked a question, thou shalt not.
Sophia Wanuna had been there for 9 straight nights, you know.
She was sleepy or whatever. But I mean, no, this is the point though.
Yeah.
That's the chairman of IEBC asked a question, any questions. And we never raised questions enough and put him on the spot about, well, when the system is failed, what does it mean? What did it mean that you're going to manual? How are these numbers being tinkered with? The fellow stood there and left and smiled and, waved. The same would be said when the president announced the cabinet, then says, Kuzeni mkunywe chai.
Did you even ask, like, is it tea with milk or without?
Anyway. Yeah, we did ask. So, I mean,
what Sophia is saying is, what Sophia is asking is, there's a very high turnover in Kenyan media. I'll just give you a small example. You know the guy who covered the Watergate scandal? I don't think any of you will.
Yes.
Probably, yes.
Well, I know of it.
He is still an associate editor at Washington Post. The guy in Kenya, the guy who covered the 2010 promulgation of the Constitution, is already out of the newsroom
in a PR
Kenya.
firm.
Yeah, so you don't have this so-called institutional memory. You don't have people to look. I mean, they're few and far between. You'll have Mutua here, but how many Mutuas do you have who can actually train the Sophia Wanunas, the Catherine Omwandas and all that, the first timers, the guys who are covering elections for the first time? So,
since Mutua has been covering elections since the time of...
Yes, that's what I mean, but how many of them do you have? That's what I'm asking.
Since 1980.
Not 80 I was in school. We can't flip that towards to the media and now indict the media for the shortcomings. But I think it's a valid question. Yes, we have a turnover in the media. You can't expect people to stay in the media forever.
Yeah, but it's too fast.
The
don't
fact
leave
that
a
they
legacy.
come in and there's regular training in terms of how to cover election, that's well and good. I think here at the Standard Group before the elections, we had trainings in terms of how journalists are going to cover the elections. So I don't think that is something that we can use as an excuse for the shortcomings of the Electoral Commission to be able to give them a leeway.
Martin, my story for Independent continues. I'll give you the next part of that story, but let's go to the phone call now. Good morning. Good morning.
Wow.
I believe we have a problem with that. Wait.
Hang on.
Yes.
Martin, this same article went through and put another scenario in 1992 when the then, I think the ECK chair, can't remember his name, in the 1992 elections, asked for a question, and the entire KICC was fire, and you could see that, the question that the journalists were asking with their notebooks and whatnot. Flip to 2013, iPads and phones and whatnot. Any questions? Just flip my Twitter like no questions.
Temple Run.
Now interviewing the IEBC chair, tweet pic. Nothing wrong with that technology, but just the quality of saying the shoestring journalism, like you're talking about, that following up on a story, on an issue, and sticking with it, because that appears to be the problem today. We want to have the big story today, move on next, put it on Twitter, have the most retweets and hashtag and trend, and you're a good journalist.
No, that's not the way to go. That's why, I mean, in media houses also, I can't absorb them completely. It's something that journalists also need to take upon themselves, so that they can, before you go for an interview, you must know that what kind of interview are you going for, what is critical in this issue. And it gets annoying when even some of us, when we're in the newsrooms and we see a major event like that, and you are being asked whether you have a question. You do not even need to be asked whether you have a question. You need to be pursuing the question yourself, so that you might put things into perspective. So that's an indictment on the part of the media, and it's something that we need to relook at ourselves. And
as an entire industry, it's not about
not just one or two.
Yeah.
We need to check that in our industry, so that even the kind of journalists we are sending to certain functions, we should know who can be able to cover a particular particular event who is capable of doing this kind of thing. And they also need to be briefed, well briefed, from the newsroom when they go to such functions, so that they can be able to ask the right questions, so that they don't let people get away with some of these issues. And
murder.
I agree with Martin, because there's some occasions, I mean, if you ask a journalist, what political system or what electoral system do we have? And they'll stand and sit and still think about it before they answer you first past the post. I mean, journalists don't even know what electoral system we have. Journalists don't know the laws, electoral laws surrounding our system. And I think that's a personal decision, like Martin says. You have to actually decide, hang on, I'm going to cover the elections, so let me get the Constitution and let me go through what the Constitution says about this and this and this and this. And I think that would probably better equip you so that when you're in the field and when somebody says something funny, you're like, oh, well, but you know, this section says this and this and this. And I think that's what we lack. I think we are masters of, what is it? Masters of everything? And
we're a jack of all trades.
Yeah, jack of all trades and masters of none, because because we're covering one story and then going to another story. And it's also about our own industry. We need to have specialization. We need to branch off.
Put people on beat.
Exactly. You're on this beat, you're on the political beat, you're on the election beat. There needs to be some sort of organization. I think that goes to what Clay said a few weeks back, that there needs to be some sort of institution or journalism institution, something like similar to law, you know, where you churn out professionals.
Everything, then you go there for a few months.
Some peerage thing, you know, where you can.
You churn out
and then
people
also the training that he's referring to. The training is so fleeting. I am very sure, and I'm sorry to say this, probably next general elections, Sophia will be training the new guys who will be going to cover the elections. She's covered just one election, am I? Yes. So you see, it's sometimes so fleeting, because probably the person who covered the last two elections before Sophia is not available.
Has already moved on.
Has already moved on. You see, so the training that journalists get before this is also very fleeting. Just before the elections, there's some institutions we have here, I think they're called Media Council of Kenya.
Yes.
Yeah. And probably they come up with these things like how to cover elections, maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Okay. 3 weeks is just, maybe a short time before the elections that they're training people. Then after that, it stops. And I think these things need to continue. I mean, over a period of time, these trainings on different issues, because like even when the cabinet secretaries were giving their reports the other day, these guys were asking questions, and then one of the cabinet secretaries asked, like, why are you asking a question and then answering it? And I felt embarrassed as a journalist, you know. I felt like that's an indictment, you know, on your capability as a journalist. Why were you even sent there? You get? So all these things, they need to be done over a period of time, not just one off and then we forget about it. Oh, we trained you for 3 hours on how to cover elections. That's it. Until 2017. Go. Go and spend 9 days at Bomas.
Okay. But I think sorry, for IABC to probably earn trust again, it needs to start working now. It needs to start having civic education now. It needs to decide whether it's going to break up the 6 elections into 2. You have the, you know, president.
That's what they want, which is to go through parliament?
Exactly. So just
and
give us a
needs
plan.
To say why him.
They need to give us a plan of what 2017 will look like. We need to start doing it now so that we can gain trust.
And rightfully, Martin would say that the media should be asking and demanding for the answers this time, not just asking questions.
Not waiting to be asked whether you have a question.
Yes.
Because most of the time, some of us, when we go to functions, we don't wait to be asked whether we have a question.
You ask
the question, you shoot it direct and be able to. That's the only way to engage your interviewee. But like Catherine is saying, what we've just been in consensus about is that, what is IBC doing now? I don't know. No Kenyan knows what they're doing now. They're just, after the elections, they went to sleep.
I am hoping they've not gone to India to spend 1 month to come and tell us that they're studying how to hold elections. I hope so. They've not gone.
If they have to win that trust by Kenyans, they have those machines.
Very expensive.
Let them start working on those machines now, so that they can be able to be. By the time we get to the elections, they will be so fired up that they will not even need to be recharged. So that they register voting. Yeah, they make use of them.
Actually, what are they doing now?
And we have a very complicated.
These are good questions you're raising now.
We have a complicated elections at our hands.
True.
When you vote for so many guys, you need definitely to be educated on that. Yeah. That education is not there.
They should have
and
been
the money is there. You know, the money is there. These are the questions I think as we move along now, we'll start putting them to them so that they can be able to tell us and be able to know what they are up to. Because you can't have a country like India with 3 commissioners and they are running an elections of over 84 million people.
No, 800.
800 million, sorry.
Yes.
And you have a commission here with about 11 people and they can't run an election of 40 million Kenyans.
It's actually 12 million voters.
Yeah, 12 million voters. Those guys have 814 million.
Those guys are 814 million voters, of which they have 100 new voters.
100 million new voters. They are guys who just turned 18.
Wow. And it's that commission that...
Yes, the commission, yes.
But you see, they also came up with a very good system because they know that the security, instead of holding the elections all on one day, they actually hold it in stages so that the security forces can move from one place to another. And those guys every state has its own police force, then they have the so-called border security force, then they have Central Reserve Police Force, then they have like now, I mean the ones that are from the so-called, what are they called? The federal like states, the states that actually don't have political governments, you see, which are governed from the center, union territories. So all these, they can be used, but they still have to move them, just to make sure that there's peace. Because in India, what they used to do is what is called booth capturing. Here, you guys call it ballot stuffing, where you stuff ballot boxes. In India, the gundas is a Hindi word for thugs. They come and actually capture the booth, the polling station, and then put all the votes in the candidate's name. So that used to happen a lot. And then it's only IEBC, which actually, Election Commission of India, which actually could come up with measures and say like, no, the only way we can curb this is that you give us more security forces and then we hold the election in phases. But here, it's working now. It's working. It never used to work as well as it's working now. But here we have to wait for probably John Alan Namu or Mohammed to come to your office and ask you questions. That's when we see your head and then it disappears again.
A breath of fresh air in last year's election coverage was the presidential debates. You must say that in itself provided a platform to have all the candidates and allow Kenyans to hear them field questions that, of course, were important. Do you agree, Martin?
I agree. That was good. It was good, but the fact that we had that session for the first time in our country, we could see the kind of people who are seeking public office, so that they can be able to tell us their agenda. We could differentiate between who is a joker and who is serious. So that was a good start. But I think we rushed too far on that one and forgot that we had not cemented the preparations for that particular election. That is, I think we jumped the gun.
We were too focused on the debate as opposed to the people going to actually do the actual elections.
We were focused on the event. The debate was an event.
We really wanted the president.
It was a big event, but who was it for?
Yes.
The people who mattered, we forgot about them. We didn't tell them, when you go to the booth, this is how you're supposed to do it, and this is how it's supposed to go.
We told them that.
We told them, but that's would not have been. They should have been explained for those particular people. Yes, they knew those ones. They're going to vote, but did they know about the other?
But
number.
My theory that withstanding, it was it was good. I mean, for the first time, I think it was a good step moving forward. But Kenyans had already made up their minds. They were never going to change. No one convinced anyone.
So
on
the
that.
It was an event. It was a social. The debate was a social event. Yeah, it was a social event by.
It did not weigh into anybody's changing their mind.
Yeah, it was a social event by Media Owners Association and probably Media Council of Kenya or the Kenyan Media Fraternity and Sorority.
So it was a social event.
You're like, yes, we did it. We did it before any other East African country.
Nobody changed up their mind.
No. You're saying it might as well not have been there, Clay. It was not there.
No. What? Listen, I'm trying to say, for those who mattered, between 4 former Prime Minister Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta. Their voters already made up their mind. It's people like Dida who made a show and convinced everyone else was never going to vote for either of the two to vote for Dida. It was a protest vote for, whatever it is. That's what it is. There's nothing. No one has any data to tell us that, actually people change their minds to vote for Raila Odinga or Uhuru Kenyatta.
Because actually, if now, coverage to have had that debate.
I think that the debate was good for the first time, but I wish that the seat was a little bit hotter. The second debate was great, but if it was a two-horse race, like we would have liked to say the whole of 2013. It would have been different. And then you pick them out. You pick out the prime minister, the former prime minister, and you pick out the current president, and you ask them questions directly, and you ask not blanket questions. That's why I'm saying the second one was a better debate than the first one. Then you get to know, and then maybe people will change their minds. But I do think someone changed their mind with that debate. I mean, they were very eloquent. They were very, they made points that we would never have heard before.
James remembers what Dida said, and can you remember what actually probably
Uhuru said or Raila said?
I remember.
Mr. Kenyatta said ICC. Yes, ICC is a personal issue. That's what. But you see, as Catherine says, if at all we pick these people, then you could have asked them specific questions. What is your view on the economy? What is your view on foreign affairs? What is, on all these burning issues that actually we have now?
You've done a good research to do a follow-up and follow the candidates, not only on what he's saying, but his track record and his party. We didn't have that opportunity.
I don't know what happens to our libraries.
So many candidates.
With so many candidates, there's no way you'd have put some of these questions. And this being a first time...
it was good for the first time. That's why we need to say that.
That's why
it was a good social event. It was a social
event. Like the final debate to be the two-horse race.
Just 2 or 3 guys who are on the...
But remember, we had tried to ask 2 people who went to court.
That's the challenge.
And they got back in. So and this is the thing, I think we should have a commission like what the states, the US has. The US, the people who organize the debate, it's like an IBC of some sort. Yeah. So it sits the entire 4 years. It would create, the environment, the places where people would go, and would say, well, we're going to have this event in particular location. These are the audience who voted, vetted them over time, and these are the hosts for that. So it is more of something that the public would agree, as opposed to a whole.
We did not pigeonhole like the problems, the specific problems. Like, okay, fine, let's talk about land, let's talk about squatters, let's talk about poverty, let's talk about education, and then ask them their views on all this, so that they actually talk to the people, they talk to these issues, or address them. It was it was more or less like blanket. And again, the media, there was so much euphoria. We were so happy that actually we've done this before Uganda, we've done this before Tanzania, we've done this.
We must bring this to an end.
What we need to pick up on what Smart is saying. We need to build, even the organizers right now of such an event, they should also be thinking at this point in time
on how to do
the next.
Because it's true.
And zero in on how they're going to zero in on just 2 or 3 people, so that there will be more time for them to ventilate in terms of what their issues will be, as opposed to having a whole crowd.
Yes.
That is something also needs to be checked.
Our time is up. Thank you, gentlemen, lady. Thank you. Analyst in the making. For being part of the newsroom this morning. Clay, I love the new hair.
Thank you.
There's no hair.
You see, right now people are actually talking about my hair.
When there's pretty much nothing. Just like James. Do you love my hair?
No.
See, there's nothing. There you go. So you can't love Clay's hair because there's nothing.
You're seeing fogging.
As I say in Swahili, but ya mwenzio usilalie mlango wazi. That was my compliment to me.
Yes, so. All right, thank you so much. What an interesting, exciting newsroom this morning we had.
Brilliant. Martin, Clay, Kath, you did well.